I'm going to read this story called Losers. It was originally written, I'll just read a portion of it. It was originally written for a Kearny Street Workshop creative writing class that Brian Comey-Dempster conducted. And the exercise was, the story came from an exercise, and the exercise was to write down a list of words that made us uncomfortable. And then we had to pass that list to the person on the left or on the right, and then that person had to circle a word, and then they handed that word back to us, and we had to write a story based on that word. I won't tell you what that word is because there's a child in the room, but that word inspired the story, and it went on to be published in the Sycamore Review. Losers. Mr. Rubino stood on the springboard, looking strong and authoritative against the pale blue sky, like a superhero or a judge. "And go," he yelled. We all jumped in and splashed our way across the pool. Because it sounds vaguely sexual, most of the guys were doing the breaststroke. This had been the topic of discussion beforehand, and the girls, armed with their newfound high school feminism, were not amused. They were doing the decidedly asexual freestyle. I was doing the backstroke in hopes of catching a glimpse of Mr. Rubino's balls. He hardly ever wore underwear. Calisthenics were always interesting, but today he was wearing the kind of shorts that come with their own underwear stitched inside. Yet another disappointing 45 minutes in PE. At the other end of the pool, we all climbed out and stood on the hot cement, rolling our eyes impatiently. So lame, the swim test. Swim the length of the pool, cross the width underwater, tread water for 5 minutes. Easy. If you don't know how to swim in Hawaii, you might as well be a haole from Idaho, eating potatoes while driving a tractor or whatever they do where there's lots of land and no water. We all knew how to swim, all except Russell Tanabe, evidently, who had sunk to the bottom of the pool and now lay amid a mass of dead leaves collecting by the drain. Donnie Iacona, the only real jock in the class, pointed and said, "Hey, Mr. Rubino, what the fuck is that?" As if Russell were a giant piece of shit in red Bermuda shorts. Mr. Rubino was in the air and in the water, shirts, shoes, and all, resurfacing with Russell before any of us could realize that that giant piece of shit was someone getting an F on the swim test. We watched as Mr. Rubino administered textbook mouth-to-mouth right from the poster thumbtacked to the door of the showers. He bent over Russell, counting out chest compressions, blowing air into his mouth. Russell's stomach moved up and down as if the air were bypassing his lungs altogether and going straight to his flabby gut. "Come on, Russell, come on," Mr. Rubino said desperately. He was no longer the mellow PE teacher we all knew, no longer the laid-back guy who didn't care if you threw like a spaz, ran like a girl, and failed the presidential physical fitness test 3 years in a row. Russell's lips had turned purple, and only the whites of his eyes were showing. Then Mr. Rubino kept at it, refusing to let him die. We watched in silence, peering over each other's shoulders for a better view. So dramatic, someone actually drowning in plain old ordinary 5th period PE. It was like a made-for-TV movie, only without a pause for commercials, which would have come right after Russell reached the bottom of the pool. But still, it was still like a movie, in that it didn't seem real, like all the action was rehearsed and perfected and no one was in any real danger. As the minutes passed, I wondered what it would have been like to have Mr. Rubino's lips against mine, to have that thick mustache tickling my nose. It must have been heaven. A pleasure completely wasted on Russell, who was probably on his way to heaven by now. Finally, Russell heaved, he turned his head and puked Nissan cup of noodles all over Mr. Rubino's lap. He opened his eyes and began to cry. "Jesus fucking Christ," shouted Mr. Rubino, shaking Russell by the shoulders. "Why didn't you tell me you can't swim?" "'Cause," Russell sobbed, "I know I look stupid." The news spread like a brush fire, and before the 6th period bell, everyone knew that some squid loser had jumped into the pool even though he didn't know how to swim because he didn't want to look stupid and almost drowned. Mr. Rubino had to rescue him and give him mouth-to-mouth until he puked ramen all over the place. Russell took a few days off. That weekend, I decided to go shoplifting. In only a matter of months, I'd gotten quite good at it. I'd gone from misdemeanor items like pencils and gum to felony items like designer acid wash jeans and perilous cashmere sweaters, which I never wore because who the hell wears sweaters in Hawaii? So I'll stop there with that one. So this is a piece that I'm working on. It's a memoir about the year I lived in Oklahoma in 1979. My father was getting his PhD at Oklahoma State University, and we're originally from Colonia on Pohnpei in Micronesia, and it was quite a culture shock to go live with my father alone, while my sister and my mother stayed on Pohnpei. And so I lived there for a year, and that summer my father, because he was always in class, my father got his PhD in 3 years. So he was always in class, he was always studying, and I was pretty much alone by myself. So he didn't want me to get bored or get in trouble, so he enrolled me in this sports program at Oklahoma State University. And on Pohnpei, there's no organized sports. We got our exercise by running around in the jungle, and so I didn't play basketball, I didn't play football, I didn't know any of that stuff. And so this scene is about the first day of that orientation where we had to go and sit with the other kids and get ready for the summer sports program. And you'll notice a theme here. This was not intentional, I just happened to pick something that kind of repeats. And I hadn't really spent a lot of time around white kids, much less black kids. So the room is situated like this. All the black kids sort of self-segregated and sat on one side, and all the white kids sat on the other, and I sat in the back with the two Mexicans because I kind of look like them. So this is from that story, that memoir called Stillwater, Oklahoma. Coach Tag is the name of our coach who's talking to us. Oh, and speaking of appropriate clothing, Coach Tag said, tell your mamas you have to have the following items by next Monday. A couple of jock straps to protect your twig and berries, swim trunks and flip-flops for the shower area. Any questions? I didn't know what a jock strap was, but because some boys sniggered at its mention, I surely was not about to ask. Hopefully my father would know. All right, throughout the course of the summer, y'all will be participating in various sports. There's the basic schoolyard stuff that I'm sure y'all are familiar with, like flag football. No, we ain't playing no tackle football yet. That's stuff for high school. Soccer, baseball, basketball, and the like. But this summer, we're going to introduce some variety like track and field, weightlifting, wrestling, tennis, and swimming. Mumbling rippled across the black half of the room. What are y'all belly aching about, Coach Tag asked, arms folded over his broad chest. Nobody answered right away, just a lot of sideways glances and staring at the floor. Well, cat got your tongue, Coach Tag insisted. Finally, Sean Gregory weighed in. Well, we can't wet our hair, Coach. It'll get all messed up and then it'll dry out and break. This ain't no beauty pageant, son. It's not that, Coach Tag, said David Higgins, one of the bigger white boys on the other side of the room. His voice was gravelly, had a gravelly quality to it. He might have already hit puberty, but it was hard to tell because he was pudgy. Not certainly muscular like some of the black kids. He said, black people just aren't good swimmers. And white boys can't play basketball for shit, Sean fired back. Hey now, Coach Tag yelled. What did I say about swearing? And what did I say about racial slurs, Higgins? I didn't use a racial slur. My daddy says black people have too much muscle and high bone density so they don't float. They just sink to the bottom. Well, your daddy's a cracker, yelled Sean. Hey, that's enough, Sean. Cracker's a racial slur, Coach Tag. Shut up, Higgins. I'll kick both your asses out of the program. Cracker? What does that even mean? Like nutcracker or crackers and cheese? Firecracker, maybe? These were fun and useful things. I couldn't imagine in what context cracker could be offensive. All right, settle down, Coach Tag said. Settle down. All right. I want to ask the whole room, not just this half. He waved his left arm over the general vicinity of the black kids. Who in this room does not know how to swim? I need to know before we get close to the water. No one answered readily. Just a lot of averted eyes and lip biting. All right, let me ask another question, Mama's boys. Who here would say they're a dang good swimmer? I shot my hand up without hesitation. As I knew nothing about football, baseball, and basketball, I was determined to excel at something, anything, in this cruel program, which thus far amounted to an exercise regimen at a minimum security prison with all its rules and racial tension. You in the back, what's your name again? Coach Tag asked, all heads turned toward me, a sea of inquisitive faces, some rather doubtful. Jay, sir. Jay, that's right, Coach Tag said. If I threw you in the water right now, would you drown? No, sir, I definitely would not drown, I said. David Higgins smirked incredulously. At that very moment, more than anything, I wanted Coach Tag to pick me up and throw me in the pool like a burlap sack full of kittens, just to prove to David Higgins that I wasn't lying and to wipe that stupid smirk off his cracker face. Excellent, declared Coach Tag. David Higgins raised his hand and said, I can swim pretty good, Coach Tag. My daddy takes me swimming up at Lake McMurray all the time. Is that a fact, Higgins? Coach Tag asked. Is that where your daddy witnessed all them black people drowning? No, sir, but David Higgins, who else can swim? A few hands, mostly white hands, drifted up slowly. Well, I guess we'll just have to start at the shallow end of the pool. Thank you.